A Picture Book of George Washington by David A. Adler. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, in a simple Virginia farmhouse. At that time, Virginia was an English colony. George learned to read and write in school. He practiced his handwriting by copying lists of rules such as keep your fingers clean and think before you speak, but his favorite subject was arithmetic. When George was 11, his father died. George helped his mother run their farm and watch his younger sister and brothers. One day, George found some surveying tools that had belonged to his father. He used them to measure and map a turnip field and a pine forest. He liked surveying. At 16, George was very tall and looked much older. He was given a job surveying land in the Virginia wilderness. In 1753, when George Washington was 21, he joined the Virginia Army. He rode to the Ohio Valley to warn the French to get off English land. In 1754, the French and Indian War began. George Washington fought on the side of England. He led Virginia soldiers against the French. George was known as a brave and good leader throughout the 13 American colonies. The English won their long war against the French. King George III of England wanted the American colonies to help pay the cost of the war, so he taxed them. American colonists refused to pay the taxes. In Boston, colonists dumped tea into the harbor rather than pay the tax on it. In April 1775, fighting between England and her American colonies began near Boston, at Lexington, and at Concord, Massachusetts. 1 month later, leaders of the 13 colonies met in Philadelphia. George Washington was chosen to lead the Continental Army. The war lasted 8 years. George Washington and the Continental Army fought bravely. In 1783, when the American colonies won the war, George Washington was a hero. The 13 colonies became 13 states. They joined together and formed a government, but it was weak. In 1787, a new government was formed with a Congress, a Supreme Court, and a president. George Washington was the best-known, most loved leader in America. He was elected the first president of the United States of America in 1789. He was re-elected in 1792. President George Washington signed treaties with the Indians, Spain, and England. There was a war in Europe, but George Washington kept the United States out of it. When some farmers in Pennsylvania refused to pay a tax on whiskey, George Washington sent soldiers to force the farmers to obey the law. In 1797, after 8 years as president, George Washington returned to his home at Mount Vernon. Each morning, he rode across his large farm on horseback. Sometimes he rode 15 miles north of Mount Vernon to watch the building of a new city. It would be the capital of the United States, and it would be named after him. It would be called Washington. Then, in 1799, George Washington became ill and died. He was 67 years old. George Washington was a great leader. He has been called the father of our country. It has been said that George Washington was first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen.